Hi, my name is José Ralat, Texas Monthly's taco editor and the author of American Tacos, a history and guide published by the University of Texas Press this year. A speculative rumination of the rooting of the Sur Mex family tree while behind the wheel of a self-driving car in the year 2040. My son Diego wants curry dusted churros. He's visiting his mama and me from Japan, where he has spent nearly the last decade building and test driving concept cars. The lifelong gearhead had a self-driving car delivered to his old man, an epileptic since childhood, so that I could finally experience the facsimile of being behind the wheel, and he's demure enough to allow me in the driver's seat for an excursion for empanadas filled with Mexican chorizo and Madras lentils, the aforementioned churros, and Indo-Mex tacos. The year is 2040, and the family continues to tell me to slow down. I still have trouble turning down writing assignments, partially because as I've traveled and continue to travel, I am filled with wonder at the development of Sur Mex. That is precisely what Dee and I are going for. This style of Mexican food, indigenous to the southern U.S., incrementally took hold of Southerners' palates beginning in the early 2000s and has remade the region's cuisine, at first through the interplay of ingredients from the world's greatest cornucultures, Mexico and the American South. Then, during the 2010s and 2020s, it branched out, reaching the cuisines of ethnic and racial populations, some of them immigrants from Asia, but just as easily could be African American, Cajun, even barbecue. Sur Mex is as varied as barbecue in the South. Don't worry, grits are still available. You're simply more likely to find them in a burrito than on a country breakfast platter. Diners are pretty much history. The combo plates, the ones my family and so many other families dug into regularly when visiting neighborhood Mexican restaurants, are a fading memory. In the year 2040. But how do we get here? Where and how was Sur Mex first brought to seed? Where did it initially root? And who did the nurturing? And how is it spreading and branching? Like most changes in the South, Sur Mex took a long, messy path. And in the case of this presentation, a knotted braid of time travel to finding a welcoming home. It took nearly 50 years to find its place. The American regional food, which came to the public square with the founding of Taqueria del Sol. The tradition was subsequently sustained by the likes of El Mero Taco in Memphis, as well as Ito's Cajun Cocina and the South Asian vegetarian stew bases of Indomex Twisted Turban, both in Houston in the 2010s and 2020s, and began an earnest effort of codification. It wasn't just in the linear trajectory that it's been on with tacos of fried chicken or the aforementioned albondigas and chipotle with braided collard greens, ones made by Mexican immigrants, Chicanos, and their white business partners. Instead, Sur Mex's classification into a fully realized culinary category lies in the splitting into a regional family tree reflective of the South's diverse ethnic and racial population. Here's where Diego, back in the car after grabbing our food, raises his churros stuffed white paper bag, grease spots blooming in places, removes one of the tubes of fried dough, sparkling dark with what Americans have generically termed curry powder, mixed with sugar to tamp down any lip puckering heat the customer might interpret while eating. Not my boy. D already has a small cup of creamy jalapeno salsa he snuck out of the fridge. He plunges the bottom of a churro into the shallow cup, lifts it to his mouth, chomps down on the end of it, and grins the smile of a child filled with unfettered joy. It's good to be home, puppy, he says. Powder and crumbs of fried dough tumble from his chin onto his shirt, then his lap, and finally the passenger seat of the until now new self-driving car. I grumble and smile. I tell my son I love him and then drop my voice. You're cleaning that up when we get home. In the beginning, there was Taqueria del Sol, an Atlanta-based chain with outposts in Georgia and Nashville that opened its first restaurant in 2000 with executive chef and co-owner Eddie Hernandez at the helm in the kitchen, where the Sur Mex regional style of tacos quietly developed with the shepherding of partner Mike Clank. Then there is El Mero Taco, established by Jacob Dries, a native of Memphis, and his wife Clarissa Dries, a native of Oaxaca. Their Sur Mex is best experienced in the buttermilk fried chicken taco, light and tangy with a blanket of queso blanco. In Houston, where taco trucks have long reigned as the primary method by which residents consume tacos, Cajun Tex-Mex is commonly fetched from their own food trucks, with LED signs spelling out the word tacos, T-A-C-E-A-U-X-S. Well, likely the first was Ito's Cajun Cocina taco truck, which co-owner Jason Harry, a native of Acadiana, Louisiana, established as a link between the two neighborhoods. His mobile food rig calls home the African American Third Ward and the Mexican American Second Ward. There's a great Tex-Mex tradition in Houston, Harry says. The Bayou City is home to the original ninfas on Navigation, the restaurant that popularized fajitas in the 1970s. But there's also a great tradition of Cajun food. Why not blend the two? Twisted Turban, a restaurant focused on Indo-Mex, the integration of subcontinental Indian and Mexican foods, also called Houston home in 2020. Whether you're Chinese, Indian, from Pakistan, or wherever, when you live in a place with such a strong Mexican or Tex-Mex presence, you're going to gravitate toward that, says Umar Alem, the owner of Twisted Turban. Alem, who immigrated to the Houston area from South Asia, came to open his restaurant for that very reason. It's natural. Indeed, people of color and the children of immigrants from across the hemisphere and globe have found a refreshing change of view or accessibility for their culinary heritages and cultures via tortilla folded foods, or something approximating the tortilla. The latter is true of Twisted Turban and many Indo-Mex joints, which sub-buttery, flaky paratha, a South Asian flatbread, for what would otherwise be a flour tortilla. I'm running this history through my head as the car brakes at a red light. The car actually stopped at the red light. I chuckled and wondered. Dean mumbled an unintelligible response, his mouth still full of food. I wrapped my right arm around his neck and gently moved his head to my face and kissed the top of his head. His hair remains dyed an effervescent blue just like when he was 11. How has this kid not changed? I thought before pondering how our Latino brethren and fellow immigrants changed everything, and for the better. The population growth in Asians also jumped, creating an abundance of opportunity for crossover taco creations that speak not only to the provenance of the cooks, but to the place they are made, the South. Add Cajun and West Indian populations across the South, and Sur Mex becomes a grand tree under which we bask. This is us now. This is Diego now. Even as we get home and both of us forget about the mess of food he left in the seats.